What up, fam? Mr. Fisher coming at you again. Home studio. I got the window open. It's a beautiful day today, and it's raining right now. And I just love a good spring rain, man. Smells amazing. Sounds great. It's a good night. I hope this is some good sleeping weather. Anyway, we are moving on to To Kill a Mockingbird, chapter 24 today. And the main point of this chapter is definitely hypocrisy. Now, if you don't know what hypocrisy is, you may want to hit the pause button and look that up right now, because it's definitely a big point in this chapter. In fact, there are also some major ironies taking place in this chapter. I'm going to read a little bit more of this chapter than I normally do. Usually I just kind of hit on a few points, but this one, it's got some strong dialogue. A lot of it is heavy points that are just, you can extrapolate, you can like pull them out and just talk about, but this has got some dialogue and we need to sort through a little bit of this dialogue. So I'm on chapter 24. The first page is on 260, and I'm just going to read a little bit here. Calpurnia wore her stiffest starched apron. She carried a tray of Charlotte. She backed up to the swinging door and pressed gently. I admired the ease and grace with which she handled heavy loads of dainty things. So did Aunt Alexandra, I guess, because she let Calpurnia serve today. So we are in the Finch's home, and Aunt Alexandra is having like a tea circle with all the neighborhood ladies. So Miss Maudie's going to be there, and Calpurnia is going to be serving, of course. And Aunt Alexandra will be sitting at the head of the table, presiding over everything. Miss Stephanie Crawford will be there. Miss Rachel will be there, and then a few other ladies that we've never met before. The social elite, if you will, of Macomb County. So if we're talking about that pyramid again, these ladies are all at the top of the pyramid. Okay. August was on the brink of September. Dill would be leaving for Meridian tomorrow. Today, he was off with Jem at Baker's Eddy. Jem had discovered with angry amazement that nobody had ever bothered to teach Dill how to swim, a skill Jem considered necessary as walking. They had spent 2 afternoons at the creek. They said they were going in naked, and I couldn't come. So I divided the lonely hours between Calpurnia and Miss Maudie. So in other words, the guys are having some guy time. It's time for the girls to have some girl time. This chapter, obviously, it's going to have a tea circle. It's going to focus heavily on gender stereotypes of females in this time period. Okay? That doesn't mean that you should turn away if you're a boy. It would actually do you a lot of good to try to learn as much as you can about female gender stereotypes and how they're wrong. Okay? So listen up. Here we go. Today, Aunt Alexandra and her missionary circle were fighting the good fight all over the house. From the kitchen, I heard Mrs. Grace Merriweather giving a report in the living room on the squalid lives of the Morenas. It sounded like to me. They put the woman out in huts when their time came, whatever that was. They had no sense of family. I knew that would distress Auntie. They subjected children to terrible ordeals when they were 13. They were crawling with yaws and earworms. They chewed up and spat out bark of a tree into a communal pot and then got drunk off of it. Immediately thereafter, the ladies adjourned for refreshments. I didn't know whether to go into the dining room or stay out. Aunt Alexandra told me to join them for refreshments. It was not necessary that I attend the business part of the meeting. She said it'd bore me. I was wearing my pink Sunday dress, shoes, and petticoat that reflected that if I spilled anything, Calpurnia would have to wash my dress again for tomorrow. This had been a busy day for her. I decided to stay out. Can I help you, Cal? I asked, wishing to be of some service. Calpurnia paused in the doorway. You be still as a mouse in that corner, she said, and you can help me load up the trays when I come back. Okay, so let's set the scene right here. Scout is uncomfortable already because she is dressed in her Sunday finest on a Saturday. And her house is filled with a whole bunch of ladies, high-class ladies. And that's just not her scene, man. She is, to use a somewhat antiquated term at this point, more of a tomboy, okay? She likes to wear pants, and she likes to be athletic, and she likes to be active and run around and do fun things and have adventures. There are some during this time period in particular who would say that's not very ladylike. Now, the issue with that is there are a lot of different ladies in the world and a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different perspectives. And obviously, you know already that for some women, it's perfectly fine if they want to have that kind of life where they dress in, high fashion clothing and they have, tea and coffee with their friends and have like meetings about social situations or whatever, or, church groups or what have you. But if they are somebody who wants to work for a living, or if they're somebody who wants to be athletic or one of those things, that's fine too. Like I said in my last video, the one that's probably over there. I said, if somebody's doing something that's different from what I would do, but it doesn't affect me and it's not hurting me, then I don't care. It's okay. Just live and let live, man. Live and let live. That's all there is to it. Okay? Don't judge people, because if you judge people, then you should also be judged. And there are a lot of people out there that really don't want to be judged. So take that into consideration. Now, there's a little bit of irony here, because one of these ladies, and it was Grace Merriweather, was talking about the unfortunate lives of the Morenas. And that's, let's see, Mrunas. Now, I'm not 100% sure what geographic location this tribe comes from, but we're talking about an isolated tribe somewhere. I feel like it's the Philippines, somewhere like that, but I don't remember for certain. Okay, and so there's a guy who is going there, and he's trying to bring Christianity to this isolated tribe. And they're talking about how horrible the lives are of these people, because number one, and this is not great, whenever a woman has her period, she has to be taken out of society and left in like a hut. She's not allowed to go to school. She's not allowed to do whatever. She can't interact with anybody. She just has to stay there while she's having her period. That's a little barbaric, but it's a cultural custom. So that's what some groups do. I'm not necessarily okay with it, and they're obviously not okay with it, but that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. It's debatable, okay? I'm not going to weigh in on that one. But they're also talking about the way that these people live. They kind of all raise each other's children. So the children kind of just run around the village, and it literally takes a village to raise the children. And these ladies say that means they have no sense of family, because everybody takes a part in raising the children. Honestly, I think that's better in a lot of ways than what our society does today, where we're all very isolated. But again, that's just my opinion. It's a different culture here. It's a different culture there. People do things differently, and that's okay, as long as they're not hurting anyone. I would argue that taking someone out of society and isolating them just because they're having their period, which is perfectly natural and a part of life, that's somewhat barbaric and probably not okay, because it is in fact hurting someone in some way. Okay? Psychologically, emotionally, financially, it's damaging. But I've got to get off my soapbox again, because we got to proceed. So the point here is, these ladies are very concerned about the poor lives of these quote unquote savages and how they're suffering. They don't have good lives. They're poor. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have, a lot of the things that these ladies do. And so they want to donate money to the church to try to support these people. Philanthropy is good. Okay? Charity is good. It really is. But you need to be charitable for the right reasons. Okay? Why, we have to ask, are these ladies being charitable towards this tribe? Are they interested in the tribe's best interest for real? Or do they just want to feel like the savior, like they're coming in to save these people, which really gives them a sense of being better than these people? That's a little twisted, okay? I mean, you always feel good if you do something good, right? If you donate money to charity, then it's going to make you feel good. That's just how it is, and that's okay. But if you're specifically like donating money to someone who's less fortunate than you just to feel better about yourself, that's a little icky. That's all I'm going to say, okay? Now, the irony, though, is that they're so concerned about the poor conditions of these oppressed people living in the jungle, while at the same time, they are literally oppressing the black people in Macomb, Alabama. And it actually gets very specific in this chapter. Now, I'm going to jump over here to page 264, and I'm going to read a fairly substantial chunk. I want you to see if you can figure out what's going on here. Yes, ma'am, sin and squalor. What's that, Gertrude? Mrs. Merriweather turned on her chimes from the lady sitting beside her. Oh, that? Well, I always say forgive and forget. Forgive and forget. Thing that church ought to do is help her lead a Christian life for those children from here on out. Some of the men ought to go out there and tell that preacher to encourage her. Excuse me, Mrs. Merriweather, I interrupted. Are you all talking about Mayella Ewell? So these ladies are going to think that's a little naive, because what they're talking about, in fact, is Tom Robinson's wife. They're saying forgive his sin of rape, which never happened, and just forget it is what should be done. And now that he's been, put in prison or whatever, they should, embrace that woman and take care of her and take care of her children, which is good, but good for the wrong reasons again. And then here we have a scout, innocent child, but actually wise beyond her years in some ways. She says, are y'all talking about Mayella Ewell? And see, now that's interesting because they're concerned about the Morenas, this tribe of people who are suffering, but they're not the least bit concerned about Mayella Ewell. Now, she's done some bad stuff, obviously. She accused Tom Robinson of rape, and he didn't do it, and we know that, and now his life may be forfeited because of that. But at the same time, that girl has suffered. She's been sexually abused. She's been physically abused. She's been forced to be the mother and wife like living in squalor in a horrible situation. And nobody does anything to help her. They don't do anything. They turn a blind eye because it's convenient. Because when it's that close to you, it gets to be a little bit uncomfortable because now you're going to have to deal with some real life stuff. You're going to have to actually stand up and face up to do something and stand up for what you believe in and speak to someone and do something rather than just sit back and complain and then just throw some money at it. It's a lot easier to sit back and judge people and throw money at a problem rather than actually getting up off your butt and doing something about it. Okay, so that's what's going on in this chapter. This is the irony here. And not only is it ironic, but it gets darkly ironic here in a second. So, and there's some not great language. They're not using the N-word, which I wouldn't say, but they do refer to Tom Robinson as a darky, which is derisive and dehumanizing. And I'm going to say it, but I don't like it much. Okay? No, child, that darky's wife, Tom Robinson's wife. Mrs. Merriweather turned back to her neighbor. There's one thing I truly believe, Gertrude, she continued, but some people just don't see it that way. If we just let them know we forgive them, that we forget, or that we've forgotten it, then this whole thing blows over. Again, she turned to me. Mrs. Merriweather was one of those childless adults who finds it necessary to assume a different tone of voice when speaking to children. Nothing, Jean Louise, she said in a stately largo. The cooks and field hands are just dissatisfied, but they're settling down now. They grumbled all the next day after that trial. Imagine that. One of the people from your community is ripped unceremoniously out of the fabric of the world and thrown into prison for a crime everyone knows he didn't commit, and all of his neighbors are somewhat upset about it. And now the people at Maycomb, the wealthy elite, and the white people are like, what is with all of these people complaining? It's very inconvenient. It makes it really hard for us to ignore this inconvenient truth and move on with our lives. Can't we all just get along now that everything has literally gone our way because of our power structure? Okay. I tell you, there's nothing more distracting than a sulky darky. I don't like this lady. Their mouths go down to here. Just ruins your day to have them in the kitchen. You know what I say? I said to my Sophie, Gertrude, I said, Sophie, you're simply not being a Christian today. Jesus Christ never went around grumbling and complaining. And it did her good. She took her eyes off the floor and said, no, Miss Merriweather, Jesus never went around grumbling. I tell you, Gertrude, you never ought to let an opportunity to go by and witness for the Lord. I was reminded of an ancient little organ at the chapel at Finch's Landing. When I was very small, and I had been very good during the day, Atticus would let me pump its bellows while he picked out a tune with one finger. The last note would linger as long as there was air to sustain it. Mrs. Merriweather had run out of air, thankfully. Mrs. Merriweather is one of those people that once you get her all pumped up, she just keeps on spewing words, and you can't get a word in edgewise. But eventually she runs out of words to say, and that's when you got to slip into the conversation. So Mrs. Farrow was a splendidly built woman with pale eyes and narrow feet. What a strange thing to notice, but whatever. She had a fresh peppermint wave in her, and her hair was a mass of tight gray ringlets. She was the second most devout lady in Macomb. She had a curious habit of prefacing everything she said with a soft sibilant sound. So a soft sibilant sound would be like an S. She has a bit of a lisp, probably. Grace, she said, it's just like I was telling Brother Hudson the other day. Brother Hudson, I said, look, like we're fighting a losing battle. A losing battle, I said. Doesn't matter to him one bit. We can educate him till we're blue in the face. We can try till we drop to make Christians out of them. But there's no lady safe in her bed these nights. He says to me, Mrs. Farrow, I don't know what we're coming to down here. I told him that was certainly a fact. Mrs. Merriweather nodded wisely. So these two ladies are talking about how dangerous the black men are during this time period. That's a very common myth that was spread, that black men were unable to resist the temptation of white ladies. Okay? They were people said that because it made them seem more animalistic and it made them easier to oppress if they're just feral animals that are a little bit dangerous. And it also kept white women and black men apart because God knows you don't want to have any intermixing of the races. I mean, Dolphus Raymond did that, and he's a questionable character, right? That's how things were back then. I mean, that was like that for a really long time, to be honest with you. We're basically just getting to a point where it's okay for people to have interracial marriages, which is phenomenal. Because, once again, if it doesn't hurt you, then stop caring so much about it. Leave other people alone and let them live their lives. Jeez, it's not that hard. Okay? Now, these two ladies here, they're the number one and number two most devout ladies in Macomb County. They start talking trash about Atticus. They don't say his name because they don't want to offend their hostess, which is Aunt Alexandra. But they say, her voice soared over the clink of coffee cups, the soft bovine sounds of the ladies munching their dainties. Gertrude, she said, I tell you, there are some good but misguided people in this town. Good but misguided. Folks in this town who think they're doing right. I mean, now far from me to say who, but some of them in this town thought they were doing the right thing a while back, but all they did was stir them up. She's talking about Atticus, and it's not appropriate to do at this point in the book, but she's doing it, and she's doing it in front of his daughter, and she's doing it in front of his sister, and she's kind of a jerk. So, somebody needs to put this lady in her place. But it can't be Scout, because that would be unseemly for a child to speak unless spoken to. And it can't be Aunt Alexandra because she's too close to it, right? She would seem petty if she were to, get upset about someone talking about her family, even if they're doing it obliquely like this. And so there's only one power player left who can do something about it. And she is the number one power player in this book, as far as I'm concerned, Miss Maudie. She doesn't take crap from anybody. So this lady just said that Atticus got all the black people stirred up, having them think that they were human beings with rights and stuff. So, his food doesn't stick going down, does it? Miss Maudie said. Two tight lines had appeared at the corners of her mouth. She'd been sitting silently beside me, her coffee cup balanced on her knee. I'd lost the thread of conversation long ago when they quit talking about Tom Robinson's wife and had contented myself with thinking about Finch's Landing in the river. Aunt Alexandra had got it backwards. The business part of the meeting was blood-curdling. The social hour was dreary. Maudie, I'm sure I don't know what you mean, said Mrs. Merriweather, trying to be all innocent and act like she wasn't just implying that Atticus was denigrating his entire family. I'm sure you do, said Miss Maudie. See, Miss Maudie's a respectable character, and here's why. No matter what her opinions are, you know them. She's not going to be fake. She's not going to be two-faced. But she's also not going to be rude. She's just going to be straightforward. She's going to be like, you're being inappropriate and you need to knock it off. Now, she doesn't come right out and say that because she doesn't have to. She knows the decorum of the social circles, and she is a powerful influence in these social circles. So it's easy for her to say, cut it out, or it's going to be a problem for you. She said no more. When Miss Maudie was angry, her brevity was icy. Something had made her deeply angry, and her gray eyes were as cold as her voice. Mrs. Merriweather reddened, glanced at me, and looked away. I could not see Mrs. Farrow. So Mrs. Maudie didn't have to say anything other than that, because she kind of gave him that mom look. The look when your mom gets angry, or some female authority figure in life gets angry. I mean, we dads, we've got to look. We've got to look too. We're like, but we rarely get that really good, powerful authority look. That is reserved, and I know I'm being stereotypical here, but I have had it directed at me so many times in my life that it's burned into my soul. You know what it looks like, and so do I. I can't do it because I don't look scary at all, especially when I'm wearing my daughter's headband, which, by the way, is quite fetching. But you know what I mean. Miss Maudie did that. She said, "You know what I'm saying." And they're like, "Ooh, busted." So, and then they go on to talk about the hypocrisy of the people in the Morena tribe after that, which is also ironic because they say, thank goodness, at least we don't have that sin upon our shoulders down here. The sin of hypocrisy. The sin of hypocrisy. Okay. Are there hypocrites in Macomb County? How are they being hypocritical? I've talked about this chapter extensively. There's still a few pages left, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing for you. I've given you enough. So my question is, how are people being hypocritical in Macomb County during this time period? In general, okay? The whole Tom Robinson trial and the aftermath, how are they being hypocritical? That's my first question. And I always like to have a second question. So here's number one, and here's number two. Number two is, what hypocrisies do you see in the wider world around you? Be it the education system, because there are some. Be it my teaching, because there possibly are some. Be it your home. Be it, you don't have to go telling tales about your family if you don't want to. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm not into gossip. But look for some kind of hypocrisy in your own life. And you can be as vague as you want, as long as you are specific enough that I understand what you're talking about. You don't have to name names, but show me hypocrisy in modern times is essentially what I'm looking for. Okay? So that's my question. How are they being hypocrites? And who else is being, not who, but how are there hypocrites in our modern times? That's the assignment for today. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, stay cool. Not as cool as my headband, but you're still pretty cool. And I got to be honest with you guys, it's been a long time since we've been in school at this point. It's been like 6-7 weeks. Man, I miss it. I miss being in school. I saw that survey the other day, like, what do you miss most about school? And most of you guys chose friends, and I chose teachers. And that's because they're my friends. But I miss you too, man. I miss being in classes and talking to you guys. It's a real bummer. I really, really hope that this ends soon. I hope that something happens, a vaccine happens. I know vaccines can't just happen like that. It's not like there's going to be one in the next month or so because it takes time. But man, I know we're not going back to school this year, but I miss human interaction. I miss hugging people. I miss seeing you guys in school. I miss our conversations. I miss my friends. I miss public. So we're all going to get through it, though. We're all in this together, right? You guys have a good night. Good luck on the assignment. Remember, Monday's assignment and today's assignment are both due on Friday. And if you have any missing work from the beginning of the beginning of the semester through March 12th, that has to be done before Friday. I cannot give you credit for it after Friday. That is a district policy. They are finalizing the first 80% of the semester by Friday. So if you are one of the people I've emailed about your grade, about missing assignments, about quizzes or anything, you got to get that done. I need it. I need it desperately because there's nothing I can do after Friday. We can keep on gaining, points for doing assignments for this next 20% of the semester. But if you had a D or an E in the first 80%, and you get an A in the 20%, your grade's going to elevate, but it's not going to be what you want it to be probably. So if you're wondering, how do I figure out what I'm missing? Go to Google Classroom and see what you're missing. It's that easy. Or go to Power School and see what you're missing. There are maybe a few things in Google Classroom that are not necessarily graded, but Power School tells no lies. If it says missing in Power School, it's missing. Okay? So take care of that by Friday. I've already sent all the emails I'm putting the information in the video. You guys got to have some of this on your own shoulders. So good luck. I have faith in you. I know you can do this. Get your work in, okay? If you think you might be missing something, check. If you know you're missing something, and some of you know who you are because I've talked to you, come on, get it done. Don't let the stress and anxiety keep you from getting it done. Just knock it out. I'm flexible. Hit me up and find out what you can do to get it done maybe more easily. Maybe I can do something for you, but I can't extend it past Friday. That's it. That's the be-all deadline, okay? So there's nothing else I can do. Got to be done by Friday. You got this. I have faith in you. Here we go.